when it comes to widening your frame, most people focus on building the muscle in your body, right? Mainly the shoulders, side delts, and certain also muscle groups to expand your frame, right? Using soft tissue. But what if there are exercises that expand your frame not by adding extra muscle, but by expanding your actual bone structure itself, like the underlying bone structure? That's what I'm going to be covering today because, yes, right, adding muscle mass, using muscle tissue to widen your frame, that is no doubt a very effective way of widening your frame. But by widening our skeletal structure, we create a greater base, right? Especially when you're still young, because as you get older, it gets harder and harder to actually widen your skeletal structure. But it creates a better base for us to build our physiques off of. So I'm going to be covering all of the most common exercises that people talk about. And I'll be honest, a lot of these are just pure cope. And I'm going to be explaining why they make zero sense using both anecdotes, like of what works and what doesn't, and also some anatomy as well to explain why certain things work or don't work. Because I do study anatomy in my degree as of right now. So, so I'm just saying, right? A lot of these methods are just cope, but some of them do actually work, and I'm going to be explaining exactly why they work. So let's get started. And okay, before we get into it, this is purely going to be exercises that you do. So if you want to inject growth hormones or steroids to try and grow your bones, or drink raw milk, or get surgery, none of that is going to be covered, right? If you're watching this, you're probably not into that as well, but of course you can do it at your own risk. So first one, swimming, right? The idea that swimming can widen your shoulders and make you wider because swimmers have wide shoulders. Swimming to get wider and even taller is a cope. What is this keep? It's a cope because the problem with this is selection bias. People see the top level swimmers, right? All the top level swimmers, they're tall, they have really wide shoulders, and they have really long arms. And then people automatically assume, people like this guy over here, automatically assume that swimming is what made them like that. Swimming is what made them wide shouldered and have really long arms. But that's not the reason, right? If you actually think about it, the reason that all these top swimmers have this build, it's not because swimming made them like that. It's that they naturally have that specific build, which allowed them to excel in swimming, which is why at the top level, all the swimmers have this specific build. It's the same reason why basketball players are all tall. It's not that basketball makes you tall. It's that all the players who are naturally tall are better at basketball because of sports specificity. So naturally, at the top level, all the top basketball players are tall. The same thing can be said about weightlifters, right? People talk about how weightlifting makes you short and stocky. That's not true. Again, it's because weightlifters who are naturally short and stocky, they excel at that sport because they have the natural build for it. That's why at the top level, all of these weightlifters have that specific build. So, and again, if you go to this video, which I think it's all just cope, by the way. If you go to this video, right, where they talk about wider clavicles, the very first comment, the very top comment that you see when you open it, is just a guy completely debunking this, talking about a guy who swam a lot, but he is still narrow. And I can tell you my own anecdote as well. I knew a guy in high school who was probably one of the best swimmer I knew. And and people talk about, this is not about clavicles, but height. And he was 5'6", even though people talk about swimming makes you tall and stuff. And he had around average clavicles as well. So this is my little drawing. So you should already know this, but if you don't know it yet, the idea that swimming can make you wider shouldered, that's like saying basketball makes you taller or weightlifting makes you shorter. It's complete cope. Don't waste your time. And again, if you look at these videos where they talk about why swimmers are so good, it's not because they have lats or biceps like this thumbnail suggests. It's that they have that genetic predisposition to that bone structure. They're genetically predisposed to have a long torso and long arms, which helps them excel in swimming. That's why at the top level, all the swimmers are built like that. It's because they are naturally built to do well in swimming by genetics. Okay, second method is clavicle stretch. Clavicle stretching exercises, mainly the Reeves deadlift, the Hercules hold, just another example, or the wide grip pull up. And I also drew a guy getting pulled apart by two guys. And the problem, and okay, so the idea behind this is that when you do exercises like the Reeves deadlift or just the Hercules hold, when your arms are getting stretched out by the weights, that's going to somehow stretch out your shoulders, stretch out your clavicles, and make you wider, right? Because you're holding the weights like that. Well, first off, if you actually look into the Reeves deadlift, it wasn't actually a deadlift. The Reeves deadlift was more of a shrug. He would hold the plates like that, and then he would perform a shrugging motion to train his side delts and upper traps. Now, Steve Reeves did also say that it widened his shoulders, but I'm going to debunk that with facts and logic and science and explain exactly why this is cope. First off, there's literally zero anecdotes of it working. I tried to find online a single person who mentioned how Reeves deadlift somehow made them wider. I literally found zero. Like, there's literally, if you can find one, comment down below, let me know. But I literally found zero anecdotal evidence of someone actually widening their frame using the Reeves deadlift or any of these other exercises that stretch out your shoulders. And if you actually look at the anatomy of the shoulder girdle, like the glenohumeral joint and the ligaments that attach to it, you can see exactly why it not only makes zero sense, and at best it could just make you injured. And I actually do have a test on this in a few weeks, so I do know a thing or two, right? So firstly, let's look at where the clavicle attaches. This right here, this is the clavicle bone, and this is the scapula. And the clavicle attaches to the scapula through the acromioclavicular ligament, which basically just means that this is the acromion, right? So the scapula, you have the glenoid cavity, which is where your arm, your humerus attaches to, the coracoid process and the acromion. And you can see, right, the clavicle attaches to the scapula at the acromion, right? So acromioclavicular, acromion to the clavicle right here. And then the arm, the humerus, attaches to the scapula at the glenoid cavity. So the arm is not actually attached to the clavicle. Arm is attached to the scapula, and then the scapula is attached to the clavicle, which means when you do Reeves deadlift, Hercules hold, or whatever, right, you're not actually stretching the clavicle at all. You're literally just stretching the ligaments between the arm, humerus, and the scapula, right here at the glenoid cavity. You're stretching, and also somewhat of the coracoid process as well. But you're stretching, right? The humerus is here, the scapula is here. You're stretching the ligaments between the arm bone, the humerus, and the scapula. That's all that you're stretching. You're not even stretching the clavicle because the clavicle is up here. It attaches to the scapula. The humerus and the clavicle, they don't even attach to each other, which means that when you're doing this bullshit exercise, you're literally just stretching between the humerus and the scapula. And in case you don't know this, ligaments is a lot weaker than bone. So if you want to somehow stretch your clavicle, it makes no sense because the ligaments between your shoulder joint and scapula, between your arm, humerus, and scapula, would snap before you can even put any serious load on the clavicle to somehow stretch it. Right? I hope you can understand what I'm saying right now. But the idea that the Reeves deadlift could somehow work, it's under this false pretense that somehow your arms, the humerus attaches to the clavicle, and by pulling the arm, you can stretch out the clavicle. But that just, if you look at anatomy, that just doesn't work. All right, again, humerus attaches to the scapula. And if you just want to pull the entire scapula, you're just stretching the ligaments between the humerus and the scapula, right? If the ligament would snap before you can even put if the load gets heavy enough to actually stretch these bones. And also the idea that you can somehow just stretch a bone to make it longer, that's just a bit stupid as well. That's why I said that at best it can just make you injured. Okay, hopefully this makes sense to you. Again, humerus attaches to the scapula at the glenoid cavity and also the acromion as well. but the clavicle attaches to the scapula up here. So they're not even directly attached. And bone is a lot stronger than ligament. So the ligament would snap before you can even put any serious load on the bone. So that's why the Reeves deadlift and all of these other variations where you try and pull your arm outwards to make you wider, that's why this is all another cope. So hopefully you can stop doing this as well. So what does actually work? Well, there is actually a method that works, and that is through, you might have heard of this, rib cage expansion. The idea where you do certain exercises that expand your rib cage to make your body wider. And I can prove it works right now. If you just take a deep breath and put your hand on your chest as you take a deep breath, you can feel your chest expanding as you take a deep breath. That's because the rib cage is not one complete fused together bone structure. The rib cage, you have your ribs, but the ribs attach to a set of hyaline cartilage before it attaches to the sternum. So it's not complete bone, right? You have all this costal cartilage, which is hyaline cartilage, by the way, which allows your rib cage to expand and contract as you breathe. And that's the basic idea behind rib cage expansion, right? You're stretching these costal cartilages, which expands your rib cage and makes your entire upper torso wider. And here you can see Paul Kelso with his transformation through rib cage expansion. And it actually has, unlike the stupid Reeves deadlift method or even the swimmer's method, it actually does have anecdotes of it working. Right? This is a really recent video by Natural Hypertrophy about pullovers. And if you just scroll down the comments, right, I didn't even scroll that far, but I found like a bunch of comments talking about how rib cage expansion does actually work. Right? Because you're not trying to stretch out your clavicle bone or stretch out a fixed bone, you're stretching out the cartilage, the hyaline cartilage in your rib cage. And if you go back to the golden era, right, Arnold talked about it, all the bodybuilders like back in the day, like 50 years ago, it was common knowledge, right, that you can do pullovers to expand your rib cage and make your upper torso wider. Like again, Paul Kelso, Arnold, and all of his contemporaries, it was common knowledge back then. It's just forgotten now in the modern day, which is crazy because it's literally the only method to expand your skeletal structure that actually works, unlike all these other cope methods over here. And again, this is from the Paul Kelso's Shrug book, same book as this. And you can see him talking about how ribcage expansion works. It's not just like bend or somehow stretch a bone. You're stimulating the costal cartilage that attaches to the ribs. That's why it does work, right? Because again, if you just take a deep breath, you can feel your rib cage expand. So that alone should be enough proof that rib cage expansion does work. You're stretching the costal cartilages. You can take a pause and read this through if you want. If you want the PDF to this, I can just leave a comment as well. I can send it to you. So how do you actually do rib cage expansion, right? People talk about pullovers. What about breathing squats? What about all these methods? Well, in my opinion, and I do think this is true, breathing squat is pretty stupid if you actually look into how it works. Because I was confused about breathing squats at first, right? How does breathing squats expand the ribcage? The idea behind the breathing squat is that you do a set of 20 squats, which makes you breathless, which makes you have deep breathing, which expands the ribcage. Yeah, so that's probably not the best way to do it, because if you want to have deep breathing, you can literally just do deep breathing, like normally, without having to do a set of fucking 20 squats, which is going to be super fatiguing and it's going to drain all your energy in the gym. And it's literally like, if you know anything about hypertrophy, a set of 5 squats versus a set of 20 squats is literally equally effective if you go close enough to failure, except a set of 20 squats is going to have super high fatigue. So the idea of breathing squats to induce deep breathing to expand the ribcage, that is pretty stupid. So I would suggest just sticking to the dumbbell pullover, because if you do just stretch your arm behind your back like in the pullover motion, you can feel your chest expanding as well. And this is what pretty much what all the rib cage expansion advocates talk about as the main exercise to widen your frame, the dumbbell pullover. And I would suggest doing it this style where you do across the bench and just do a normal rep range, right? 2 to 3 sets of 6 to 10. You can do 8 to 12, 12 to 15, whatever you like. But the idea is you want to just progressively overload it like any other exercise, right? You maintain, again, use the cross bench style, sag your hips, get that bigger stretch, and just progressively overload and go up to 95, 100 pounds and max out the dumbbells in your gym. And that's going to cause your rib cage to expand over time because you're using more and more weight. You shouldn't be trying to just do 20, 30 rep pump sets. Treat it like any other exercise, right? Do progressively overload, right? Get up to try and max out the dumbbells. And after that, use an easy bar where you can load up plates. And because as you increase the weight, you're increasing the mechanical tension on your rib cage, which is going to make it expand even more. Right now, I'm at 60 pounds for 10. I haven't been doing it for that long yet. I started like less than a year ago, but I can start to see some difference in how my rib cage and upper body look already. And I plan on getting to the max dumbbells in my gym, which is only 95 pounds, in the next year or two. So this is the method for rib cage expansion, for widening your frame that actually does work, right? It has all the anecdote all the way from way back in like the 50s or something to Arnold's time, all the way up until the modern era, just 2 years ago. You can still see the comments. And unlike all these other cope methods, this actually works. So if you have narrow clavicles and you want to, in my link in description, I have a program specifically for narrow clavicles if you're interested, right? I'm going to tell you the bone widening methods and also specific muscle groups to build on top of your widened bone structure, and also illusion strategies like specific hairstyles and clothing choices to look wider when you're in clothes. So if you're interested in that, you can go check out the link in the description for my narrow clavicle program. And yeah, subscribe for more videos if you're interested.